Hey guys, it's Kevin and finally here to review Season 3 of Sex Education. So what this season is essentially about is basically after the events of Season 2, Mr. Groff is no longer principal of Moordale. We now have this new headmaster, Hope, that comes in, who she is really trying to make the school fresh and really like turn it around in a significant way, but really starts to turn things around for the worse, and we also get to see these characters go through significant arcs that really change them as people along the way. So Sex Education Season 3, I was obviously very hyped for this season. You guys know this is one of my favorite shows on TV, but I also think it's one of the best in its genre, period. I don't think there have been many teen dramas that have been as consistent as Sex Education really has. I think this has been a show that has done such an excellent job of taking certain tropes of teen dramas and turning it on its head and doing something generally different and more authentic with it than you would really expect them to. And going into Season 3, I was really excited to see how it was all going to play out. There was a lot of things that left off on Season 2. You guys know how much I especially adored that season. For me, the show was just getting better and better, and I was very excited to see how Season 3 would turn out. And look, it's taken me a long time to review this season, and maybe that's led you to the conclusion that I don't like this season or something like that, and that's very much not the case at all. I just have not been great with watching TV this year. You guys know this. I've said it with a lot of TV seasons, but I finally did get a chance to finish this season, and I have to say, I still very much enjoyed Season 3 quite a bit. I don't think it is the best season like a lot of people are saying. I think that, honestly, it might be my least favorite season so far, but it's still a damn good season of television that really does an excellent job of putting these characters in some very interesting places and shedding a light on some very important topics and really just showing what this, what they've always, what Sex Education has always really excelled at. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. My God, I mean, this season is very stacked in terms of talent. I mean, there are so many characters that we're focusing on here, and because of that, we get a lot more time for the secondary cast especially to really shine this season. I think, honestly, everyone really does kill it. There isn't a bad performance in the bunch here. Of course, we have Star of Potomac, Asa Butterfield, who, look, I know a lot of people are really starting to get annoyed with Otis. They really don't like him as a character, but my God, Asa Butterfield is just so great in this role, and he continues to prove to me every single season, why he really is the best choice, I think. I think if Asa Butterfield wasn't in this role, I don't think I'd like Otis as much as I really do. I think Otis this season, yes, he can be very frustrating. Yes, he can go in some directions and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, a lot of what he does can be very confounding, but Otis does go through a significant arc this season. It does feel like Otis ends this season in a place that really puts him in a different perspective, and I think Butterfield really does do that very well. This is an Otis that is a little bit more aware of his actions. They kind of start to catch up to him a bit more here, and I really like what Butterfield ended up doing with the character. I think Otis works best in his more quieter moments, and he gets a lot of those this season, and he does a really strong job with that, so I've really still enjoyed what he ended up doing here. Again, yes, this can be a character that at times can be very grating, but I think that Butterfield really does continue to ground this character, and I really liked what he ended up doing here. Ncuti Gatwa as well is still really great as Eric. Now, I will say, narrative-wise, there isn't quite as much going on with him this season as some of the other characters, but he still is really great here. Eric is still, like, the best friend that you've always wanted, and I think he does a really great job at playing that role, but also fleshing him out a bit more, seeing more of his personal life and things like that. I think they do a good job with that this season. That's something they've always excelled at. And Emma Mackey continues to stun. I mean, every single season, she is just blowing me away as this character. Maeve really gets put through the ringer once again this season. There are so many responsibilities that are just mounted on her, and you really see her struggling, but you also get to see a more lighthearted side of her this season. She's a little bit less she's a little bit less closed off. She is a little bit less I would say, sort of cynical. She has a little bit more lightness to her, and that really does make Emma Mackey's performance shine through in that way. I really love what she's done with this character. I think she continues to really do some excellent work, and I think these three still do an excellent job throughout this entire season. And of course, Gillian Anderson as well. I mean, I can talk about her, I can talk about her for hours about how great she is as the character of Jean, but once again, I mean, she really just shows the kind of character that Jean really is, diving into, Jean as a person and the goals that she wants in her life, not just as this sort of sex therapist or Otis's mother. We really do get to see Jean in a different light this season, and I really liked what they end up doing with her here. I think all of the central cast is still really strong here. For me, though, I really think it is a supporting cast that shines through this season, especially Connor Swindells, who plays the character of Adam, might just be the standout of this entire season. If Amy Lou Wood carried season 2, I think Connor Swindells carries season 3. Adam as a character is fucking amazing this season, and I'll get more into it when it comes to the writing, but Swindells really, I think, dives into just how far Adam has really come. You see Adam's in a place where he's a lot more open about himself. He is not afraid to share his personal feelings with people. He is unafraid to, he's trying to explore himself more. He's trying to become the best possible version of himself. Even if he still isn't fully open about who he actually is, you can see him really trying to change for the better, and Swindells just does such an amazing job with that. Every single emotion that this character embodies, it just feels so genuine, and I really loved what they ended up doing with him this season. I think Swindells absolutely kills it here. I've loved him this entire show, but I think this season especially, he really does kill it. He has one moment in the finale especially, and it nearly brought me to tears. I mean, it was just such a heartfelt moment, and I loved what he ended up providing to the season. I think, like I said, he was absolutely the big standout here for me. I love what he ended up doing, but that's not to say the rest of the cast also doesn't deliver. Kedar Williams-Stirling is still really strong as Jackson. I really like what they did with him. Amy Lou Wood, once again, is still really good here. I don't think she gives quite as strong of a performance as she does in season 2, but she still does have some really good moments this season. It's a very subtle performance, probably one of the more subtle performances in the cast this season, and I really liked what Amy Lou Wood ended up doing here. Alistair Petrie was also a big standout for me. Mr. Groff has way more to work with this season. This is really the season where he becomes a full-fledged character. If season 2 is really like his villain arc, so to speak, this is really where we start to peel back the layers of this character and really see what's made him into this monster of sorts, and I think he does such an amazing job with that. I really was blown away by his performance. I've enjoyed his performance other seasons, but this performance, this season especially, really just shows how great Petrie is as this character and the places he's willing to go. I really love what he ended up doing here. But also, Mimi Keene this season as Ruby really is just amazing. I absolutely loved her performance here. Ruby is way more of like a pivotal character this season than other seasons, and because of that, she gets a lot more to do as an actress, and I think Keene really does go to those places. We have a much deeper understanding of who Ruby really is and why she has this very like hard and just very sort of ruthless exterior. Why does she act this way? And I think that Keene really does dive into that very well, and I think by the end of the season, Ruby honestly has become one of my favorite characters. I really loved what they ended up doing with her here, and I think Keene really does end up crushing that role. I really loved her this season. I love Tanya Reynolds. I've always really liked her in this role, and I think she gave a very strong performance, but the other big standout this season for me is the inclusion of Jemima Kirke as the character of Hope, who is probably one of the most infuriating and downright, evil characters that you will see on any show this year, but Kirke does such an amazing job playing a character that honestly is a lot more complex than you would really think. I think if another actor is in this role, this character could really become very cartoony and very over the top, but but Kirke walks this really great tightrope between someone that is generally very intimidating, but also someone that you understand why she is this way. She feels like a person. She never once feels like this sort of just cartoony villain. She feels like there is a real person under all of that, and it's because of Kirke's performance here. Like I said, this is a character that is very frustrating. This is a character that a lot of people are really going to hate. I myself really could not stand this character in a lot of moments, but it really is due to Kirke here that really makes this character memorable, and I really love what she ended up doing. Overall, I just really love the ensemble this season. I think everyone really does kill it here. I like I said, I don't think there's a single false performance in the bunch. Every single actor really rose to the occasion. I think this is generally one of the best ensembles on TV, and this season really does prove as to why. But now I really do want to get into the directing for this season, because what's really good about this show, I think, is as it goes along, the show does need to evolve. And while it still is a lot of fun, in fact, there's a lot of really silly comedy this season, especially in the first half of the season. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff going on. This season is significantly darker, I think, than the first two. This season does get dark in quite a few areas, and I really did enjoy that blend quite well. I think that the comedy, works really well here. This show never takes itself too seriously, but it is willing to go to some darker places than the other two seasons have. And I think that's something that this show did a really strong job with. I think that there's always that temptation, when you're in a show, especially when you've gone, through the earlier years and you're a little bit deeper into your show, you want to kind of change things up. And this show finds a way to change things up, but not completely betray its tone. The fun is still there. The zaniness is there more than ever. That's still very much a part of this show. And the show has always had some really dramatic moments. I think it's always, blended those two elements very well together, but even more so here, the show goes through some very dark elements, and I think that this show did a good job with never losing its way. I think overall, that's something that as a creator, I think Laurie Noon has always done an amazing job with on this show. She's always done a really good job of understanding the direction that the show needs to go in, but never trying to undermine the tone. And I think, never trying to undermine what she's doing. And I think directing-wise, they do a really strong job here. Let's get into the writing, because holy shit, we have a lot to talk about. Similar to Season 2, there are a lot of characters that we are following this season. And as a result, there's a lot of different storylines we have going on here, but each one of them I think are very interesting to follow. I don't think there's a storyline this season that I found to be boring. There isn't a storyline this season that I wasn't at least somewhat into, and that's something I really do have to commend this show on. When we're following like 17 characters, there's definitely a possibility there's going to be a story that you don't like, and that didn't really happen for me this season. I think every storyline, they tried to do something different here. Going all the way to Otis as our main character here. He goes through a very interesting arc this season to where him and Maeve are not really on the greatest of terms, and he is much closer with Ruby. They really do try to sell you on this relationship. These two are a lot closer here. We start to dive a lot more into them, and it really does make Otis come to some very interesting revelations as a character, and I thought that it worked honestly very well. I think a lot of people, again, I've seen a lot of criticisms that Otis is like a terrible character. Otis is the true villain of the show, and I just wouldn't go there at all. Like, yes, Otis is stubborn. Yes, Otis is very frustrating. But this season really does kind of call him out for that. He kind of comes to that realization, and I really did enjoy getting to see that this season. I like getting to see an Otis that is more self-aware of who he really is, but also evolving as a character. And I really did feel like they took him to some very interesting places this season. And I think they do a strong job with that. And the same goes for Maeve. She is in a place this season, like I said, where she has all these responsibilities mounted on her, but there is a lot more hope going on with her this season. There is a lot of positive growth for that character. I actually before this just watched a video where someone said that Maeve has kind of been in the same like narrative cycle for 3 seasons, and I don't really see that. Like, sure, she's going through similar type of conflicts, but I felt this season definitely forward her arc in a much more positive light than past seasons, and I really liked what they ended up doing for that character. Just very satisfying growth for her overall. I really loved what they ended up doing with Maeve as a character this season, but I have to say, I think the one arc that a lot of people are really going to latch onto is the relation between Eric and Adam. That is a big part of this season. A lot of people really latched onto that relationship last season, and I will just say you will not be disappointed with how it plays out here. They are a very interesting pair, and they end up becoming probably one of the more complex sort of relationships we've dealt with in this show yet, and I really liked what they ended up doing with them as characters. I thought that overall, the places that they go with both of these characters was not exactly what I was expecting for them to do, but I thought it made a lot of sense narrative-wise, and it shows that while these two, are in this relationship, they're both very different people, and we kind of start to see, how that sort of complicates their relationship, but also how they are trying to move forward. They are trying to, be the best possible versions of themselves in these relationships, and I enjoyed what they did with those two overall. I think definitely one of the best parts of this season is the relationship between those two. That's something that you very much do grow attached to, similar to how you grow attached to Otis and Ruby, and how those two, really do show these different versions of themselves. We get to see different sides of these characters that we've kind of seen, but not to the full extent that we do here, and it really does show how far some of these characters have come. And like I said, when it comes to Adam, especially as a character, I think we really get to see how far that character has really evolved since season 1, and I think by the end of the show, he might just be my favorite character. I really love the places that they're going with him. I love how we get to see a lot more of who he really wants to be. There's nothing really holding Adam back at this point, aside from the fact that he is not fully open to the fact that he is gay. He gets to explore, more of his own ideals. What does he want to do for himself? We get to see a lot of that this season, but also how can he be the best possible boyfriend to Eric, someone that is very much out, someone that is very open with who he is. How can he balance that out nicely? And I think by the end of this season, he might just be my favorite character. I really love everything they've done with him, and I think this season, really does excel at that. And that's something that I really did appreciate this season. Jackson as a character has a very interesting arc where he is, starting to, overcoming his anxiety from last season and things like that, but he also is attracted to this person, Cal, and Cal is a non-binary character, and you can see how conflicted Jackson really is with dealing with that. There's a lot that he doesn't really understand how he feels when it comes to Cal, and I thought that was another very interesting storyline that the show really did dive into. Aimee is still recovering from, her sexual assault last season and sort of like grappling with all of that. So there really is a lot going on here. The most surprising storyline for me was actually what they do with Mr. Groff. Without spoiling too much, Mr. Groff kind of goes through a bit of a redemption arc this season. We sort of dive deeper into the sort of childhood trauma that made him this way and why he has become such a hateful man, why he is so vile, why he, wants Adam to be a certain way. And by the end of the season, you really do feel for him. It actually worked a lot better than I thought it was going to. And I really loved what they ended up doing with that character. I never would have thought that Mr. Groff would end up becoming one of the most three-dimensional characters in Sex Education, but they really do take him to those places this season, and I thought it worked very well, so I really loved what they ended up doing with that character. But the other big storyline going on is really this larger story with Moordale, where basically after the events of Season 2, the board has become a lot stricter. They want to turn things around. They really want to, put these students into check. And in comes this character of Hope, who, like I said, is very infuriating, is someone that is frequently very demanding. She has a lot of like Dolores Umbridge type tendencies to her. And at first she seems to be like this very like breath of fresh air. She has a much different way of doing things than Mr. Groff really did. But as the season unfolds, you start to see she has a very, very problematic mindset. The way that she views the world, the way that she sees things, there's a bit of a divide going on with her and the students, and that leads to a very interesting storyline that I honestly wasn't ready for just how deep it was really going to go, but it really was very interesting what this show has to say about just the way different generations, look at life and how that can really compromise, the way they really run things. And I think that's something this season really does commentate on very well. There is one scene especially that I was honestly really shocked with how dark it got, but it really did take me off guard. Like, it was honestly very chilling to watch. The sort of methods that Hope has, some of them are just straight up monstrous, and you really do see what has made her this way. Still, like I said, underneath all of that, there is a person. She never feels like a one-dimensional character, and that's something I always will appreciate about the show. Obviously, there's a lot of other themes here, like identity, which this show has always dived into, really focusing on your identity and who you are. That's something this show talks about a lot. Obviously, sexuality, that's always been a major theme of this show. But also other ideas like, really losing yourself. That's a big theme of this season, I think, and sort of like how you can become your best self. That's something else that I think this season really dives into. The idea of humanity, I think, is another big theme of this season. So there's a lot of things that this season really does dive deep into, and there's a lot of things that have become mainstays of the show that kind of start to fade away. And for a while, especially in the first few episodes of the season, I was like, is this going to be the final season? But the way they close things out, I don't really feel like that's going to be the case. I feel like there is a lot more room to grow when it comes to these characters, and I'm very excited to see, what they continue to do with them, because again, they really are just enriching these characters. They are in no way, I think, I think in no way they are flanderizing these characters. I think still this show has such a knack when it comes to that, and that's something that I always will appreciate when it comes to this show. They never really try to cheapen these characters in any way, and I think that's something that works very well here. But like I said, the humor is still very much there. There are a lot of generally very funny moments this season. There's a recurring gag in episode 1. My God, it is so stupid, and it should not work, but it had me absolutely in stitches with what they decided to do when it came to this specific joke this season. It honestly worked a lot better than I thought it really was going to. There is a whole episode dedicated to someone literally just pooping on a windshield. I'm not going to get into more than that. There's a whole mystery around who ended up doing it. And it is generally just such an entertaining episode. Like, the humor is still very much there this season. It honestly, at points, might be the funniest season we've had yet, and I don't think in any way that has faded away. So I still think there's a very good blend, I think, between humor, but also this far darker and mature sort of storylines that they're going through. It still blends very nicely, I think. So overall, I still think that the writing is very strong this season. I think there's a lot of great storylines going on here. Getting into the cinematography, when it comes to the look and feel of this show, that's something that they've always done such a great job with. It's very authentic, and I think that's something that works very well this season. I've always really enjoyed the cinematography. The score also is very strong here. Like I said, it goes a little bit darker at points, and I did appreciate that a lot, but the usual playfulness is still very much there as well as the soundtrack continues to always be a huge standout. This show always just picks the right songs for pretty much everything, and I always really do enjoy the soundtrack that we're given within this show. But I will say the editing this season is not always the best. That is the one issue I really do have, I think, when it comes to season 3, is that we are balancing a lot of storylines this season. And it's not that they're all bad. Like I said, every single storyline this season I really did enjoy. I think the real issue for me is that this season still is only 8 episodes. And just because of the sheer amount of storylines we're getting, all of the characters that we're trying to check in with at once, it does at times feel a little over bloated. And it does at points feel like there's just a little too much going on, especially for 8 episodes. There are some storylines in particular that don't really end in the most satisfying way. And I think they could have done just a little bit more with some of them. I think that there are a lot of them that don't get a lot of development, but they end in some really great places. But overall, I think this season needed either longer episodes or it needed more than just 8 episodes, because I think 8 episodes for this season, it just wasn't enough. There's a lot more going on here, and it's probably the most eventful season that we've had of this show yet, and I think we just needed a lot more time to dive into some of these arcs, because I think it would have made the season that much more impactful as a whole. But I will say the way things do wrap up, it ends on this very melancholy note. The show definitely seems like it's shifting. It's going in a much different direction. And that's really great because it keeps the show fresh and exciting. And I'll talk about it more when we dive into the spoilers, but it definitely feels like they are still finding ways to surprise us. They are still finding ways to go into some generally very unpredictable directions. And I think that makes the show that much better as a result. But now I really do want to dive into the spoilers, which, holy shit, there's so much to talk about when it comes to Season 3, so I guess we'll just dive into it right now. I gotta just go through all of the arcs here, because there's so much to talk about. I guess we'll just start off with Otis and Ruby and Maeve and everything and what's really going on there. So early on, I think the thing that was the most shocking to me when it came to Otis is that the first episode, you know, we really get back into, like, that sex clinic with him giving these one-on-ones to people, us seeing that he is still very much going about that. We didn't see it as much in Season 2, but this season makes a much bigger deal of it, only to just tear it down completely. Literally, the first episode ends, and the sex clinic, the whole bathroom, it's just destroyed instantly by this construction crew, and to me, that felt like a sign that this might be the final season. Like, watching that, I'm like, this feels like very final. This doesn't feel like something that we'll ever come back from. And yeah, I mean, it definitely paints this like darker cloud over the season, but what I like about that is that it gives us a chance to really dive headfirst into Otis's personal growth. And through doing that with the character of Ruby, I thought that was a really interesting choice, because you guys know one of my favorite scenes of Season 2 was that conversation that Otis and Ruby really did have, where we sort of see that maybe she isn't this mean girl. Maybe there is a little bit more to her than we thought. And we really do get to see that this season, that Ruby is generally very insecure about herself. She only is the way that she is because she doesn't believe that others are taking her seriously. She doesn't believe that others generally really do care about her. And when Otis, we see, is actually making a genuine effort to connect with her, to treat her like a real person, and just kind of respect the fact that there isn't a lot that's special about Ruby. She is just normal in that way. He generally respects that, and I ended up really liking that relationship a lot. My favorite scene, honestly, of the entire season is probably the double date that Ruby and Otis and Eric and Adam go on, because it really feels like this is our time where we get to see these characters just be their most raw and like interesting selves. I love the moment where like Adam reveals that he's into the Kardashians, and him and Ruby kind of bond over that. You know, we see that Ruby's actually pretty good at bowling. Like, I thought that was a really great moment for these characters, and I really liked what they did with the Ruby character this season. She really feels like a full-fledged character, and that's something I really did appreciate. So I was all here for them sort of, you know, sort of venturing away from Otis and Maeve, who in the beginning of the season really want just nothing to do with each other. Maeve thinks that Otis just completely ignored her message, and he is annoyed because he thinks that she didn't listen to his message and didn't respond to him or anything like that. So there's a lot of tension going on there. So I like the fact that we were seeing these two kind of, venture away from each other and find other relationships and maybe recognize that maybe they are just better off as friends. Maybe they don't need to be together constantly. And I was kind of here for that. So I really liked that the first 4 episodes made a concerted effort to dive deeper into those relationships. I think Otis and Ruby especially, very unlikely pairing, but one I really did end up liking. I like that, like I said at first, she doesn't really treat him that well. She's very sort of standoffish. She is very much berating him because he's not acting the way that she wants him to act. But you get the sense that she's doing that because she feels this is the only way people are going to like her. She feels that she is incapable of actual love or actual care. When she invites Otis to meet her father, she's kind of expecting him to just run off because, she doesn't have a great family life. But he actually is generally very supportive of her. And it's through these moments that we see in Otis that actually is getting better, actually is going through a significant arc. We see that Otis is actually becoming a better person in that way. But still, he has those commitment issues, and I like that because that's always going to be a character flaw. Otis is a flawed character. He's not this perfect person where everything's just going to work out for him. No, he has those issues where he can't fully commit to a relationship. So when Ruby immediately just goes ahead and says she loves him, he can't say it back. And I thought that was a really strong moment for him as a character because it shows that, this isn't just an issue he's had with Ruby. He's had this issue with Ola. He wasn't willing, that time he was willing to put that time in, but that relationship just didn't really work out because Ola wanted something different. But even with Maeve, he's tried, every time it seems like they're getting close, he just doesn't fully go through with it. And then when he does, he doesn't really try to pursue it. And when it came to Ruby, there was that opportunity for him, I think, to finally admit to her, to finally try to open up to someone and really commit to a relationship, and still he doesn't do it. And I really like the moment where, she realizes he doesn't love him and they just kind of break things off. My only issue with that, I will say, is that this kind of stems back to a problem I said earlier. This is a storyline that honestly doesn't really go anywhere. Ruby breaks things off with Otis, and after that she has nothing to do for the remainder of the season. She has that moment where they're basically rioting against Hope, and she tries to get her to, hang. She doesn't want Hope to get rid of the footage. She tries to fight her from, from just completely just erasing that footage. And everything like that. But other than that, they really... And we get a scene where it seems like she's a little bit somber about the fact that him and Maeve are talking again. But other than that, we really don't get much with Ruby. And that was a disappointment to me because I really liked what they did with her. And I thought that she was a really good way to show that Otis is evolving. But I liked where they ended up taking Otis this season because he has that moment where he talks to Jean and realizes that he is not good at commitment. He always shuts things down. Every time something is getting a little bit more serious, he kind of just shutters away. And I like that he comes to that realization here. I think that was a really good moment for him. And with him fully opening up to Jean about Maeve, even if she finds out through secondhand information through Aimee, because Aimee spills the beans. She does this 2 times, which I thought was honestly really funny. She does it once to Jean, she does it again to Maureen when it comes to Adam. But I like the fact that he does fully open up to her about Maeve. He doesn't really have a lot to hide anymore. It seems like their relationship is probably the best that it's ever been in terms of Jean and Otis, and I really did like seeing that a lot. But then they try to dive a lot more into him and Maeve and their whole relationship, and that relationship to me at this point is kind of going in circles. I don't think that it is quite as interesting as it once was, because they do seem to be kind of doing the same thing with them, where every time it seems like Otis and Maeve are going to fully open up to each other and finally, embrace the idea of them being together, because they are at their best selves when they are together. The show doesn't really want to get them there. What's holding them back this season is Isaac, which, to be honest, I just never really bought into. I didn't really like the Isaac and Maeve relationship all that much, because I felt like they glossed over a lot of the more sort of vain acts that Isaac ended up committing. I mean, he literally erased a voicemail. He tried to make it so Maeve didn't pursue Otis. He wanted Maeve all to himself, and I just couldn't fully get behind that relationship. I understand that Maeve, again, is trying to move on, similar to Otis, but it really just felt like the only reason they did this is, again, because they were doing this story with Otis and Ruby. They felt they needed to do something with Maeve, and I just felt with Maeve and Isaac, I just never really fully bought into that relationship. So that storyline just didn't really work for me. So I actually like when, eventually they do break things off and Maeve tries to focus a lot more on herself. I'm glad that Maeve is going to that place. I'm glad that Maeve, after this season, is finally venturing away from, that trailer park. She's getting away from Moordale altogether. She's finally given an opportunity to, focus on herself. Her mother finally takes accountability and, doesn't want her sister to end up the same way that Maeve did. It's a really great moment. This is what I mean when I say there's a lot of great forward momentum for her character. I like that we end the season in a place where she decides to make a choice fully for herself, not for anyone else. She makes this choice on her own to go to America. Yes, she's coaxed into doing it by Aimee, which I really like the deepening of their friendship as well. I thought that was very strong overall. But I really liked what they did with that character, and I'm just a little tired, though, of the will they, won't they. I understand why they're doing it, but I really thought this season they would just go ahead and just get them together already, because I just felt that it would have made a lot more sense. But on the flip side, I also think they really should have waited to focus more on these two, because I think they should have focused more on Otis and Ruby. I think that should have been much more of a focal point for the season, especially because they make such a big deal out of it in the first 4 episodes. I think that the last 4, when Ruby just kind of gets forgotten about, I think they need to do a bit more with her as a character. Maybe focus more on these two trying to make it work, but Otis not really going there. They still could have done something with those two, and I think it would have just made things feel a bit more fresher, as opposed to just more of the same. So that was the only thing that I really did struggle with, but like I said, I did like the idea that Maeve is venturing away from Moordale altogether, because it is a really good moment for her as a character, and I'm excited to see what we really do get with her moving forward next season, because she probably is going to be separated from everyone else. So a Maeve that's more focused on bettering herself, I think, is a really good place to take that character, and I'm excited to see what they do with her overall. And as I said last season, if you recall, I basically said, if this season does not end with Maeve and Otis together, I'm gonna be a little bit annoyed. And yeah, I'm kind of at that point where it's when are these, if you're going to give us the sense that these two are drifting apart from each other and give us other relationships, what's the point of really trying to bring them back together? It's I really think they should have just focused on the Otis and Ruby of it all this season, and then give us a little taste of the fact that maybe he still does like Maeve. Still have Maeve like Otis. I think that would have been a good direction to go. But maybe don't have Otis in the same place. Maybe he's with Ruby now. Maybe he likes his relation with Ruby. That would have been a good justification as to why these two still aren't together. But with the way they ended things off, with Maeve essentially breaking things off with Ruby because he didn't feel the same way, and then going over to Maeve, and Maeve basically going off on her own, I just didn't feel like it made sense. I just didn't really understand why we needed to toy with this relationship again. It just felt a little bit repetitive overall, and I wish they could have done some more there. Like I said, I love the growth they're doing with Maeve as a character. I even like what they're doing with Otis as a character. Like I said, where he's becoming a bit more self-aware of like his tendencies, and he's making a genuine effort to like try to fix those. I want to see more of that, but I really think that they should have focused a lot less on that dynamic because it just is not that interesting anymore. But the other big storyline, of course, I'm sure you guys want me to talk about, is everything going on with Eric and Adam. And honestly, I really enjoyed what they did with their relationship. I know a lot of people are hardening on Eric as a character, saying that he was a dick, saying that he wasn't sensitive enough to Adam and things like that. I kind of do see both sides here because I think overall they're in very different places in their life. Eric is a openly gay man. He's someone that, he knows who he is. He's very confident with who he is, and especially when he ventures off to this trip to see his family, he really gets to explore himself in a way that he really hasn't gone to. When he goes to that gay bar, it's the first time he truly feels like he can be himself. It's the first time where, he realizes this is who he really wants to be. And he wants to do these things with Adam because he has a chance to finally do that. And you see that Adam is making an effort to try to appease to Eric. He is making an effort to try to, do these things with Eric. But, of course, the thing holding him back is that he's not open about who he is. A lot of people do not know about his sexuality. A lot of people do not know that Adam likes Eric in that way, and that Adam has this relationship with Eric. And you can see why this is very much a roadblock for them. So I can understand why this would frustrate Eric. Now, do I think that he should go and cheat on Adam? That's a bit more complicated. I don't think that was necessarily the right direction to go in, but I understand why he ultimately did do that, because he recognized that he didn't really feel much in this relationship. He didn't really feel that connection. And you can see how much this really does heartbreak Adam, who was making a genuine effort to try to connect with Eric, to try to push himself to be more open about himself. And we see that in the finale. He's much more open about the fact that he's into poetry. He wants to be like this dog trainer of sorts. If that's what season 4 is going to be, by the way, with Adam, I'm fully on board with that. I want to see more of Adam the dog trainer and him sort of, getting in touch with himself. He opens up to his mom and admits that Eric is his boyfriend and that they had a lot more, it wasn't just a friendship, even though Maureen kind of knew, because again, Aimee ended up telling her. It's a really good moment for him as a character. So I understand, why they did have to break things off. I think there is a point where these two can end up together again. I think that there definitely is a future for them, similar to where I do actually think there could be a future for Otis and Ruby as well. I'm just not entirely sure if it's going to fully work out. And I think that right now they have a lot more growth that they both need to do. Eric needs to become a lot more sympathetic to people and realize that, some people aren't as willing to do things, as he is. Some people aren't just going to parade around in, much flamboyant clothing and things like that like Eric is. Some people aren't just going to willingly go to gay bars, and Eric is willing to do that, but he has to recognize that some people aren't willing to, and Adam is not really there yet. I don't know if he will be there. I think he is gradually getting there as a character, but I'm excited to see what they do, and especially his relation with Rakhee. I don't know if these two are going to become a thing, but if they do, I think it would be interesting to see. They both obviously, share similar stories in that they were with Eric. I don't think Rakhee is a particularly good boyfriend to Eric. I talked about this last season. And then Adam's kind of on the opposite end, where I think he was the best possible boyfriend he could have been to Eric. I just think their relationship didn't really work out. So I think at the end of the day, it's very complicated because I think they're both in very different positions in life, and I think that's what ultimately compromised their relationship. So I'm excited to see, what they really do with them moving forward. It was a very heartbreaking moment when Eric did break things off, when Adam did break things off, and he literally told Eric that he didn't want to talk to him anymore, but you really can't blame him either. But you also can't blame Eric for being a little bit frustrated with Adam, since this isn't someone that is willing to go the extra mile. It's not really what Eric wants. Eric wants someone that's a little bit more open, and I think, again, he needs to overcome that and recognize that he needed to be a bit more sympathetic to Adam's needs. But again, maybe he'll be there in season 4. We'll really just have to see where that ends up going. So that's kind of how I felt about that whole storyline. I think it was very strong. I think there was a lot of interesting stuff they end up doing with that relationship. And like I said, I think Adam, especially as a character, went to so many interesting directions this season. I loved what they ended up doing with him overall, when he takes the blame for the poop on the windshield, even though it was Raheem who ended up doing it. I thought that was a really strong moment for him. When the whole thing goes down with Hope, which I'll get into that in a little bit, with what's going on there. I just think there were so many great moments for him, especially as a character, and that's why I think by the end of the season, I think he might just be the best character in the show overall. But of course, the real big story going on this season is everything going on with Hope as a character. Hope, again, like I said, very frustrating character for a lot of people. This is someone that, she comes in and you think that she is going to be just that. She's going to paint a more hopeful future for Moordale, but you see that she has a very closed, she has a very closed mind when it comes to looking at things. She very much sees things as, my generation did things this way, so it has to be done this way. Even if it doesn't make sense now, she completely gets rid of any sort of sexual behavior. She limits it entirely. She at first is restricting them to what they can't wear, no piercings, no nothing that, no, they can't pull down their hair. They have to let their hair down at all times. That's something that she's very strict about. And eventually she gets them to wear uniforms, and she completely transforms the school for the worse. Eventually she completely limits any sort of freedom of artistic expression, any sort of freedom of individuality, anything that makes them special, she completely just limits. And again, I think Hope as a character, a lot of people have talked about how she's this horrible character and she ruins the show, but that's kind of the point. I don't think you're supposed to like Hope at all. She's supposed to be this really sort of evil and vindictive character, but you also get the sense that Hope, again, is kind of influenced by the student body. When she's in that scene and they're telling her, you gotta be more stricter, you gotta put your foot down, that's what leads her to completely ostracize Lily and Adam and Cal, and completely just and completely just embarrass them in front of the whole school and shame them in that way. That is the darkest moment of the entire show. But you understood why she ultimately did go there, because she felt that she was doing what was right in that given moment. Obviously, it does not at all justify what she ended up doing. But I think that's what makes Hope such a complex character, is that you still understand what motivates her. She at the end of the day is doing what she feels is best for the school, and she hates the idea of losing. But I think she also has immense jealousy for a lot of other characters. When it comes to Maeve especially, while she wants to help Maeve, she wants to pay for her to go to this school, she wants to pay for her to get it, she wants to pay, she wants to help her with her financial situation. You can see that she's doing that in a way that's very performative. What's going on with Viv this season? Viv is so infuriating throughout this entire season because she is completely gaslit by Hope almost the entire season, where Hope is trying to get her to be well, this is the way things are supposed to be, and Viv is always seeing the good in Hope, until finally she does come through and realizes, yeah, there's a lot going on here that is not okay, and we need to put a stop to it. And I thought that was a really good moment for Viv as a character. But everything that Hope does, she does have her reasonings for doing it, but I think that jealousy is also very much there. And that's where we get to Jean as a character, who, the entire season she's going through a pregnancy, but she also is kind of at a crossroads where she's realizing that she needs to be better at pursuing relationships. And that's something that Otis also very much does call her out on, is that she doesn't stick to any sort of concrete relationship. She pushes people away, and I think that's very much true. We've seen her do it with Jakob. We saw her do it with, Otis's father. And I think Jakob, they do some really good things with that relationship relationship when he, talks to Jean about how he wants to get a paternity test because he doesn't fully trust her. He doesn't even know if he actually is the biological father. It's a really good moment because you realize that, like, yeah, obviously she wants to pursue this relationship, but you don't know if it's actually true. You don't know if it's actually something that's going to work out for her. And so when she actually has that child, even though she nearly dies, like, I literally thought they were going to kill off Gillian Anderson. I was very happy they ultimately didn't, because I think Jean ends this season in maybe the best place they could have, ended up for her. But I think what works so well is that you contrast that with someone like Hope, someone who honestly has very little of it. The irony is that her name is Hope, which she, like I said, doesn't have much of in her life. When she talks about how she struggled with having a child and IVF treatments and things like that, she sees that Jean is someone that is fully in control of herself, is able to do things that women beyond her age normally would not be able to do. Hope is not able to do those kinds of things, and that really bothers her. That really upsets her. That's something that she wants to be able to overcome as a character. And I don't think in any way that we're trying to, again, justify her behavior. I don't think they were trying to get you to sympathize with Hope. I think what they were really trying to do, honestly, is get you to fully understand why Hope is the way that she is. They were trying to make her a full-fledged character, and I like that. I like that she loses epically. And the idea that it gets to a point where everyone riots against the school, Mordale is, basically broke, and at the, basically at the end, we realize that Mordale's getting completely shut down. It's a really interesting idea. I like that this show is going in a different direction where these characters are going to be separated from each other. They're all going to be going in their own different directions, and I think it's going to make for a very interesting season 4. So I'm very excited to see the way that does play out. Hope as a character, I don't think we're going to see again. I think this is probably like a one-and-done character, but I think for her purpose, she definitely served it very well, and I think overall she made for a very effective villain overall. Like I said, though, there's a lot of storylines we're dealing with this season, and some of the ones that I found to be a bit underwritten that I really want a little bit more from. I already talked about how I really enjoyed Mr. Groff's story, but his story, I felt, while it was very effective, especially the scene where he stands up to his brother, we needed a little bit more of that. He kind of disappears after a few episodes into the season, and then he comes back, and I wanted to see more of him. I wanted to see more of his personal growth, but I think they do make up for it in the last 3 episodes of this season. The scene where he talks to Jean about how Maureen was right in the way that he acts, and that he needs to really, stand up to people and, fully, come to terms with all his, personal demons. I thought that was a really great scene. I love the moment where he accepts the fact that, he is this way. I think there were a lot of strong moments for that character this season, and I like what they ultimately ended up doing with him. But I think they end the Mr. Groff character in a very interesting place as well, to where now he wants to try to make amends. He wants to fix things with Maureen. He wants to reconnect with Adam, but is it too late? Is he sort of seeing the light, at a place in his life where he got everything that he wanted, but wasn't fully happy, and now he is happy, and is it just kind of too late for that to happen? I'm interested in seeing where that character is really going to go, because I think he is making an effort to turn things around, but again, is it just too little too late? I'm interested in seeing, how that really does play out for him. I was honestly kind of heartbroken when Maureen rejected him at the end, but I mean, can you really blame her with the way things have played out, with the way that Adam especially thinks of his father, and the fact that he isn't going to respect him and things like that? I want to see those two have a heart-to-heart of sorts. I think it's going to come in season 4, but it's going to really come down to, is Adam willing to do that? Is he willing to talk to his father? Is he willing to make amends? I'm interested in seeing how that's all going to play out moving forward. I think he's really become one of the most complex characters of the entire show, and I really do applaud the show for going there with him, because last season I never would have expected they were going to do that. He was such a vile and disgusting character, whereas now they're really showing that he has become this way and he doesn't want to be this way anymore, and it's really just a matter of, is he going to be willing to make those next steps to really fully turn things around? I'm interested in seeing how that really does play out overall. But some other storylines I found to be a little bit underwritten. Aimee as a character, I really loved last season, as you guys know. I think she was one of the strongest characters. She still is here, but her entire arc, I felt, was completely underwritten, with her having this boyfriend, Steve, who she's pretty much in like a loveless relationship with. He is fully devoted. He's really committed to her. He really is sympathetic to the fact that she's gone through the sexual assault, but she just isn't ready for a relationship right now, and she doesn't really know how to tell him. And I think at the end of the day, they handled it right with her breaking things off, but I wanted to see more of Aimee kind of struggling with what she went through. I think she has some very strong scenes when she talks to Jean, and Jean, tells her that she shouldn't blame herself for what happened, and that it's okay to still have like that lingering sort of PTSD from everything. I think that was a really strong scene, but I just want a little bit more with her as a character. They focused a lot on her relationship with Maeve and how close those two become, and I think the budding friendship between them, we've seen it throughout the show, but this is the closest that they've ever been. I think that was a good choice, but I just want a little bit more with Aimee. She very much felt more like a side character this season, and I think they need to do a bit more with her. Jackson's storyline with Cal, I felt, was also very underwritten. I understood what they were trying to do. I think Cal as a character is really good. I like the fact that they are very confident in who they are. They want people to respect them. It's a really good representation, I think, for, the non-binary community overall. I think that Cal represents that very well. And I think that, the idea that Jackson likes Cal but doesn't really know how to pursue them, what is the proper pronouns, he understands that, but he doesn't understand certain adjectives that he should use to describe them. I think that was an interesting sort of arc for him, but I felt that we got there a little too late into the season. For a while, they're kind of just chilling around, like smoking weed, joking. They don't really do a lot in this season, and I wanted to see more of that relationship, so that's another storyline I felt was a bit underwritten. The one storyline I especially thought that was just completely underwritten is everything going on with Ola as a character. I haven't touched upon her yet at all, and that's because this is the one story that I just wasn't super into. I get everything that they were trying to do with her. Again, like I said, I don't dislike any of these stories as stories, but I think that Ola as a character really got the short end of the stick, because this entire season, she is just a complete asshole to everyone. Everyone that she, everyone that she approaches, she is just really rude and honestly just very inconsiderate to, whether it's Otis and the fact that these two are basically in a place where they are siblings at this point. I thought that was a really fun idea, where Jean and Jakob are living together, and Ola and Otis, we can kind of see them, go from a potential couple to someone that are now, more siblings, and we don't really get to see that dynamic much at all, and I really would have liked to dive a lot more into that, because I think that would have been a really interesting idea. But especially when it comes to her relationship with Ruby, I liked the idea that Ruby basically loses every sense of her artistic freedom. She's told that her drawings are something that she should be ashamed of. She's told that her hair is something that she should be ashamed of. She loses sight of herself entirely. And I like that Otis has that conversation with her where he talks about how weird, how she should embrace her weirdness and how she is this really great person and things like that. It's really a big moment for both of them from where they were in season 1, where Otis was just completely weirded out by her. Now he really respects Ruby for who she is, and I thought that was a really strong moment. And for a while, like I said, I didn't really understand why Ola was basically also shaming Lily for this and telling her that, she did this to herself, and kind of just not really appreciating her drawings and just not being a very good girlfriend to her at all. But I did really like the moment she has with Jakob at the end of the season, where she admits that she doesn't want things to change. She misses her mom. She misses the way things were with her and Jakob. She doesn't really want things to go in this direction. I think that was a really good way for things to wrap up. I just wish that we would have gotten more of that this season. I wanted to see more of Ola sort of overcoming all of these changes in her life and her being okay with change. I think that would have been a good arc for her, but we just never really, I think we got there way too late into the season, to the point where Ola just was very unlikable throughout the majority of it, and I think they could have done a lot more with her. So that's a character that I really wanted to see a lot more with, and I hope heading into season 4, we get to see more of the stuff I want to. We get to see more of this sort of friendship that's developing between Ola and Otis. I think that could be a lot of fun to watch. I want to see more of Ola sort of warm up to the idea of, you know, Jean being like a mother of sorts to her and Otis being her brother. I think that's going to be an interesting direction for them to go in, because it does seem like Jean and Jakob are going to stick together and they're going to try to overcome this as much as they can. I think that's a good place for both of them to go as characters. You know, we see that Jakob is, he has a lot of regrets with how things turned out with, you know, his wife, and I'm excited to see, you know, where they really do go. I just wanted a lot more from her as a character. So that was the one story that I just wasn't fully satisfied by the time this season ended. Overall, though, I really did enjoy Sex Education Season 3 a lot. I think this is still a very good season of television. It deepens the characters in a very interesting way and goes in some surprisingly very dark directions that made the season very unpredictable. I do think it can be a bit overstuffed at times, but it consists of some really strong performances, some really great writing. This is still nothing short of one of the best shows on television. Even though the season I don't think was quite as good as the first two, I still had a really great time with this season overall. I will always look forward to whatever the show has to offer. I think there are some aspects of the show that are starting to get just a little repetitive, but as a whole, I really love where they're moving in terms of season 4. I think they're going in a very interesting direction that honestly is going to put the show in a very new and fresh light, and I think this late into the show, that's really what they need, and I think this show is doing a really strong job with that. So overall, I still really did enjoy Sex Education Season 3 a lot, and I am going to give it a B+. But over, guys, to my review of Sex Education Season 3. Like I said, I do apologize for this review coming out so late, but I'm very happy that I was able to finally review this season to you guys. I have a lot more TV and movie reviews on the way, so definitely look forward to that. We're getting close to the end of the year. I can't believe it, but I'm going to try to catch up as best as I possibly can. Other than that, guys, so my review of Sex Education Season 3. Let me know what you guys saw this season overall. If your thoughts on it, we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.